101 review. Book one of myself about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's a mother of two, an expert in educational neuroscience, specializes in dyslexia treatments, none other than Dr. Rebecca Troy.
Hi, good morning.
Welcome, Dr. Rebecca, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, absolutely. So thanks for having me. As you mentioned, am an expert in educational neuroscience, specializing in dyslexia. I am the mother of not one, but two dyslexic children, and I have a fabulous team over at Retrain the Dyslexic Brain where we help families to support their children at home in changing how the brain is actually connecting letters and sounds. So we're super excited about the work that we do, and we've changed so far 3,463 lives.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Dr. Rebecca. Thank you for empowering us. So today let's talk about understanding dyslexia, the brain science and research. So tell us, let's start with the person behind the diagnosis. For someone with dyslexia, the word process information differently. From your research, what does the core fundamental experience of dyslexia feel like beyond just reading difficulty?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of people have some misconceptions about what it is. I mean, people still believe that it's seeing things backwards, but it's a disconnect in the brain between letters and sounds. So if we were to look at a neurological brain image, we would notice that there is less activity in two key areas of the brain, one back here in the occipital lobe and one over the ear in the parietal temporal lobe. But it's basically where sight and sound intersect. So if you are a person with dyslexia, it means that your brain is underactivated during language tasks. You might be trying to read something and your brain might add letters in that don't belong, or it might omit letters that should be there, vowels especially. You might be trying to read a word and you get the first two letters correct, and then you might guess at the rest because your brain is really having a hard time connecting letters and sounds together. So it's definitely not a lack of effort. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's just a disconnect in how the brain processes language.
A common myth is that dyslexia is simply seeing letters backwards. How does a modern brain science definitely debunk this, and what is actually happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, definitely the visual area of the brain is impacted. And you might invert letters or see them backwards or write them backwards, and that's definitely a symptom. But it's also the connection between letters and sounds. So, I think the more that we have improved imaging technology, the more that we learn about the brain, the more that we can see that it is very complex. And there is not just this seeing things backwards. It is definitely this disconnect between how the brain connects sounds and letters, and that happens often. If you're a child, you might learn the same word over and over and over again and really struggle to retain it, even though someone may have introduced it to you 100 or more times.
Many describe dyslexia as a different wiring of the brain. Is that the accurate metaphor, or what does neuroimaging show us about the unique structure of connectivity in dyslexic brain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, if we were to look at two brains of individuals, eyes at rest, we wouldn't notice that there was anything incredibly different about them. But the minute that we ask them to perform a language task, read this book, write this essay, spell this word, there are those two areas of the brain that I mentioned earlier that for a neurotypical person have activity. And so we would see these areas light up. We would see that it's very simple for the brain to connect those things together. But when we look at the brain of a dyslexic person, those areas are underdeveloped and we do not see activity there. And so what needs to happen is we have to reorganize and reconnect letters and sounds in the brain so that the person has the ability to read and spell typically.
Dr. Rebecca, the brain architectures and the processing itself. We often hear about the left hemisphere reading network. Which specific brain regions like the occipitotemporal or temporal parietal areas are involved, and how does their function or connectivity differ in dyslexia?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was mentioning earlier, where there's just less activity than a neurotypical brain. And so something else that I think is worth mentioning is that there are gifts of this brain type too. So when we look at areas of the frontal lobe, we might see heightened creativity, more lateral thinking, more spatial thinking, more pattern recognition. And so I think the more and more that we learn about the brain, the more that we can see that while there are areas that are maybe underdeveloped, there are other areas that are really, really strong. Again, this has nothing to do with intelligence, but it's just it's a difference in how the brain is connecting those letters and sounds.
Research point to the strength in visual, spatial, and big picture thinking. Dr. Rebecca, is it a compensation or is it an inherent parallel strength of dyslexic cognitive style? What is happening in the brain to support this?
Such a great question. And I think that this is going to be the next frontier of dyslexia research. Unfortunately, there have not been a ton of studies on how the dyslexic brain comes to have these gifts, but it appears that they are very, very early on, which tells me that it may not be a compensatory thing as much as it is an inherent strength. Certainly, there could be environmental situations that cause those strengthening things to happen, but it is truly incredible to watch a person with dyslexia try to solve a puzzle or put things together in a unique way because of the way that their brain can see things and functions. So there are researchers now that are looking even as early as infancy to see how a person with dyslexia may differ and in these ways, but there's still a lot left to learn about how the strength part of the brain might be functioning.
Dr. Rebecca, research points to strength in a visual, spatial, big picture thinking. Is it inherent or is it a phonological processing? Why is it awareness of which speech sounds so critical for reading, and how is it neural mechanism specifically challenged?
Yeah. So, not a lot of people realize this, but when you read, it is important and critical to be able to picture the word in your head. So, if, for example, I said the word Germany and I told you to take away ma, what you would have to do is picture the word Germany in your head, know that ma was the middle sound, and know that ger and ni were left, and be able to put those things together. And people don't necessarily realize that that foundational phonological skill is critical for being able to spell words and being able to break words down and decode them as you are reading. And so when you look at the brain of someone with dyslexia, they don't have that activity yet where they are able to easily connect letters and sounds. So if you were to give that same task to a person with dyslexia and say, hey, the word is Germany, take away ma, what's left? It is highly likely that they're going to really struggle with that task. So that phonological memory or that orthographic memory is really, really critical. And that's something that you can build through neural retraining.
Dr. Rebecca, What does recent research on rapid automatic naming ask? We might quickly retrieving a familiar word or a symbol be separate yet crucial piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The current research states that 40% of those with dyslexia also have a struggle with working memory and processing speed. So it's that rapid automatic naming that you were mentioning. So there does appear to be a crossover in nearly half of the cases where it's difficult to retrieve words and letters in a timely manner. And so that is also something that you can strengthen and change. But it is true in the research that those things can go together. Absolutely.
Dr. Rebecca, let's talk about the cutting edge research and insights. Beyond reading, study shows a difference in auditory processing and rhythm perception. Is dyslexia at its root also timing or processing speed difference in the brain?
Yeah, so again, there is crossover there as well. Because you have dyslexia, it doesn't automatically mean that you have auditory processing disorders. But again, they can co occur, just like ADHD could co occur, just like, having visual deficits can also co occur. So, what we know is that this area of the brain, this parietal temporal area, is underdeveloped. That is also often where we process sound. And so that again, that intersection between letters and sounds and how the brain is seeing those things, we know as a struggle, but it doesn't necessarily mean that auditory processing is automatically a struggle for someone with dyslexia, if that makes sense.
Makes sense, Dr. Rebecca. So there's fascinating work on the role of cerebellum, not just the motor control in dyslexia. Can you explain this connection? Why is it revolutionary?
Well, I think, the more and more that we continue to learn about the brain, the more that we see that there are other areas that are at play, certainly with stress, certainly with the way that we feed our brain and our body. So, um, I've been myself looking into how cortisol and, um, things like how emotionally triggered a person may be by the stress of not being able to read or to spell, and how that's having an impact on the brain as well. We know that when we are in stress and we are in fight or flight mode, the brain kind of breaks down. And so I think the more that we learn about these structures and systems, the more that we realize that overall brain health, whether it's with the cerebellum or other areas, is really, really critical for wellness.
Interesting, Dr. Rebecca. And what is the most surprising or counterintuitive findings from recent genetic studies of dyslexia? What do they tell us about its inheritance and complexity?
Yeah. So what we've seen is that anywhere, depending on which researcher that you're looking at, they'll say anywhere between 50 to 84% of cases of dyslexia are heritable, meaning that they're coming from genetics. There have been researchers that have found that, it's a change in the gene in the 16th week of gestation. I'm sure other researchers would argue about that, or maybe have some other thoughts on it, but there has been a lot of study to say that it is highly, highly heritable within families. So if somebody in your family has dyslexia, highly likely that somebody else does too. But recently, like as in the last year, they've even adjusted the definition of dyslexia within the International Dyslexia Association to include more environmental factors as well. So even though you may not have genetically been predisposed to dyslexia, they're acknowledging that sometimes the environment that you're in, maybe you don't have a lot of language access in your home, maybe you were in an environment academically where you weren't exposed to a lot of connection between letters and sounds, and they're finding that people's brain can start to show those same traits of not being developed. And so I think there's a lot of research still yet to do in this area, but there is an acknowledgement from the International Dyslexia Association that it can be both heritable and environmental.
Environmental. So, Dr. Rebecca, we often focus challenges, but neurodiversity emphasizes strength. What does the research say about the correlation between dyslexia and the specific cognitive strengths like narrative reasoning, problem framing, or entrepreneurial thinking?
Yes. So I think that this area is really fascinating and something really important to talk about. So with any person, when you are focused 100% on what you can't do well all of the time, it doesn't do great things
Mhm.
for your ego, for your self-worth, for your self-talk. And so there are many, myself included, who really believe that helping these people to see the strengths that they have is critical. So there is a giftedness in creativity and lateral thinking and spatial thinking and big picture thinking. There are times when, when solving a problem, that the person with dyslexia who can see the entire picture has an advantage that I think we really need to lean into, not only for that person's self and their self worth and realizing what they have to contribute to themselves and the world, but also for workplaces and academic environments to realize that too, and to not focus as much as just on the reading and writing skills and the tests and those things, but can we also look at this other intelligence and put value there too?
Dr. Rebecca, as educational neuroscience specialized in dyslexia treatments, what are your short term and long term goals?
I would love to continue to support families who do not have access to this kind of support elsewhere. What we found is that while schools are getting better testing available, they are maybe trying to learn more about the science of reading. There are still many, many places in the country, in the world, that are far behind in their understanding of what kids truly need neurodevelopmentally in order to thrive. And so, short term is to get this access into as many hands as possible to help kids to thrive, become their best selves. But something exciting for me is that, we're continuing to dig into the strength based piece that we talked about. Um, Helping to grow the opportunities and the capacity of someone with dyslexia in their strengths as well as their phonological and orthographic memory. So long term, we would like to be industry leader because we know that what we're doing is having a profound impact on these lives.
Good luck to your goals, Dr. Rebecca, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
I would say that, you know, lean into your greatness. There are great things about you, no matter what you might currently believe. And so my advice would be to focus on the strengths, and also if there are areas that could be strengthened, don't be afraid to lean in there and really do some good work.
Some good work. Yes, definitely. And thank you for that advice, Dr. Rebecca. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, so I think that the two books that have really been influential for me have been more on the mindset side. So Carol Dweck, being one of the industry leaders in mindset and growth mindset has been absolutely influential. You may not be able to do it yet, but you will. And the other one that I have found just profoundly influential in my life is The Power of Your Mind by Joseph Murphy. So, leaning into visualization, learning to think about everything that you want as though it's already happened. And I've just found that to be so powerful, both personally and in the business as well.
Thank you for the recommended book, Dr. Rebecca. So, what is the most persistent or harmful misconception in scientific or medical community about dyslexia that you're still working to correct?
I think that we have a wait to fail idea of how to support people. So currently, I mean, I'm hearing this all the time. It's too early for us to know if this child is struggling. Let's wait. He'll grow out of it. She'll grow out of it. Let's just wait and see. And unfortunately, what that means is that the child goes through years and years of struggling and failing while we wait and see. So we can tell very early on if the child is dyslexic. And so it would be my strong advice, and the thing that I would want to change the most, that we can early identify and intervene so that there are more lives that feel positive and successful about what the future holds.
Yes. Looking ahead, what emerging technologies or research avenue, such as AI advance or neuromodulation, hold the most promise for a deeper understanding or support?
Yeah, I think AI has got a tremendous capacity to support someone with dyslexia. So, imagining that you didn't receive any kind of help to get your brain to connect letters and sounds, the ability to, you know, use AI to generate ideas or to help you to, summarize texts that may have taken you hours and hours to read otherwise, or to help you to generate some ideas in your writing. We talked about this a little bit, but dyslexics are generally very good at storytelling and narrative. Got just incredible imaginations, and AI to generate those ideas and tell those stories, I think could be really powerful.
Powerful indeed. Dr. Rebecca, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in a sixth season, abstract poetry in the third season, and of course my book 101 review in its sixth season as well, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 art fourth season, science 101, sex 101 in third season, and trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and Bible Verses 101 are my baby podcasts. So please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. So, Dr. Rebecca, if you could have every teacher, employer, and parent understand one key insight from brain science about dyslexia, what would it be?
The brain is a very pliable organ that can be changed throughout your life. So, even though you may believe that it is fixed, you absolutely can change the way your brain is functioning at any time.
Definitely, Dr. Rebecca Troy. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy or anything you want to promote on Book 101?
Got it.
Where do people can reach you, Dr.
Oh, you got
Rebecca?
it. So this website here, drrebeccatroy.com, would be kind of a one-stop shop. If you are a parent trying to figure out if your child is struggling with dyslexia, there's a screener link up at the top where you can take some very basic assessments to figure that out. You can also reach our team, learn about case studies to motivate you. All of that would live here, as well as links to our social.
Yes, people, let's support Dr. Rebecca Troy because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this will rise. So, I have one more question. Dr. Rebecca, finally framing dyslexia as a cognitive difference rather than deficit. Does the neuroscience support this view? How can this shift in perspective transform outcomes and self identity?
Yeah, so I think framing it as a difference is very powerful, because it is. There are strengths in this brain profile, like we talked about, but it does not mean that because you have dyslexia that you yourself are a deficit. There are many strengths with this brain profile. We know that the brain has got the capacity to change. So if we couple those two things together, you have an amazing brain, plus you have the ability to change how your brain is connecting letters and sounds. I really think that it's got the potential to be an unstoppable brain profile.
Unstoppable, definitely. So, Dr. Rebecca Troy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
What can people see you